Hey, welcome to my channel. So the title is true. I did make an entire chapter just to use this feature, which is 3D models in Clip Studio Paint. This was my first time to make use of the 3D models. Like before, I would use them just to set the perspective instead of using the ruler, because it was so much easier to see something in the space and how it looks and the sizing and stuff. But then I would use the rulers. I wouldn't use the model itself. But this time I tried to use the method that what's her name? I think her name is Linz. I don't know if it's pronounced Linz, but it's Lun. That's the one that I can pronounce confidently. So her method is like, instead of sketching, you pose these 3D models, and you don't really trace them. It's more of like you build clothes and features upon them and perfect them to your way or your pose, the pose that you want or whatever. So you don't really trace them. It's more of just using them as a sketch layer instead of doing the sketching all freehand. Surprisingly, a lot of people are against this method because they say like it's not real art, it's not original, blah blah blah. And I do understand it when sometimes I do understand it when it's about like CG art or illustrations, like standalone illustrations. You don't need to do them quickly. You don't have a deadline or whatever. So it's like for personal use, I don't think it's useful to actually use 3D models. Well, if you want to make it quick, sure. But if you want to make it like fully original or like have that unique stamp of yours, yeah, I don't see why you would use 3D models. I would understand 3D backgrounds though, which is like to save time and to make like blur it and make the focus on the characters. But when it comes to comics, I strongly believe in cutting corners and making the best you can, working smarter, not harder. Like, I don't understand why people are against this. It's just like, you're making it harder for yourself for no reason. And most people who are actually against this are not even artists, or at least not comic artists, especially, or manga artists. So they've never really been through the challenge of making this amount of chapters and pages at a certain amount of time and making it consistent and fixing proportions and stuff. So yeah, it's kind of weird. Like, you're not the person who's making this, so you don't know how hard it is, but you judge others. Like, I understand you're a viewer, but at the same time, if you don't like this, you can just ignore it or leave it because it's not harmful. But they say like, no, it's harmful, it's supporting others to not be original and to steal. Well, it's free to use. Like, these 3D backgrounds and stuff are free to use. They are made exactly for this purpose, to save time and cut corners and be faster and stuff. So I don't understand how this is stealing or not real or slacking off. Like, sure, if you want to learn this, I don't recommend you like tracing over a 3D model. Maybe you can break it down, maybe you can like copy it, like look at it and start to apply these certain features that you see at a certain proportional size, or even like edit it. But fake? No, bruh. It doesn't seem too interesting of an idea to spread around. Because you're not harmful, like, you're harmful for the artist, but the artist is not harming anybody doing this. So it's kind of stupid, honestly. But yeah, so it was an interesting idea. I tried it for one page that I didn't plan out. I usually plan out by doing the script and then like a really rough, crappy script, and then I fix it and cut it into pages and try to imagine it as like a manga page or a manga spread, and then make some, like they call it name in Japanese, name, which is basically like storyboarding, but like a lot crappier. So it's more thumbnails instead of storyboarding, because storyboarding for American comics and Western comics, they're a lot different, and they are really, really detailed, and they are drawn really well. But for the name or the thumbnails, they're really sketchy and quick, and sometimes only the artist can understand them. Yeah, if you have a publisher or an editor, you have to make them understandable. So sometimes they fix certain faces or add certain features or even add the names on top of the characters, which it's what I do. Like, I only ever draw their faces if they have a certain expression that I want them to have. But other than that, I just slap their name on top of the head, and that's it. Like, only the poses are down and like how the background looks, and that's it. That's the plan and stage for me. And then I go into actually sketching, then line art, and then toning and stuff like that. So yeah, I'm definitely going to be using the 3D models idea so much more. Which, by the way, it looks like it's actually harder because some people pose everything on their own. But if you see the asset store, there are a lot of poses that are named. Like, if you want to stand in pose and different stand in poses, if you want to fight in pose and different fight in poses, boxing, sword fight, whatever. So I used pre-made poses. Of course, I needed to actually make poses on my own, but it was very few. Like, it's really hard to not find the pose that you want. And even if they cost like clippies, you can get clippies in the asset store by uploading like a free material. You're gonna get 150 clippies, if I remember correctly, 150 clippies after 2 days of publishing it, and then you can change it to be to charge for it with clippies. If it's gold, I can't help you with that. You have to be in Japan to actually use it, or pay like with real money. But you're gonna find a lot of poses that are free on the internet. You're not gonna need to pay a cent. So that's that. But now for the actual like thrill of the idea, it's just how I made a whole ass chapter. So if you're interested in that, keep going. So I was going to just experiment with like one page because I was so sure I'm not gonna like this and it's gonna make my art very stiffy, because I did have an experience with this before, and I seen this method tried by other artists that I really like, and I noticed it, but it wasn't stiff at all when it was in their drawings, and I didn't understand why. When I did, it was stiff. It was apparently, when I analyzed it, after a long time, not very, but anyways, after a while, I analyzed it and I found out why it was stiff. So basically what I did was trace the outside of the pose, and I wouldn't add any modifications. Like, I would add the clothing and the hair and stuff like that, but like, it was very stiff, and it was surprisingly really ugly. Although the pose in of itself and the model in of itself didn't look strange at all, and it didn't look stiff. In fact, it actually looked somehow dynamic to a degree, and I think this is because of the grid that's put onto it and modified to fit like the certain limbs and the cylinders of the body. And I didn't do that, so I didn't shade it properly too. I didn't know much about that, so I used it for a single page. It was a test page, and I didn't end up publishing it anywhere because it was ugly as fuck and I didn't like it. And I said, like, even my shitty drawings and my shitty paneling and planning is so much better. So I canceled it. I stopped using it. I was sketching everything by hand. Here and there I would like sketch or fully render a background or a manga background and reuse it from different angles, or maybe make use of some free 3D backgrounds and stuff like that that are made for this purpose, like royalty free and stuff. But like poses in actual humans, I never understood it. Like, I can understand it for buildings and backgrounds. They are not meant to be they're not meant to have fluidity or flowy lines and stuff like that because they're stiff. They're buildings, they're bricks. But humans are a different story. So surprisingly, when I actually followed Lun, I found out she is not following the lines. she's using the base or the 3D model. It's gonna sound so stupid because I feel like a caveman, and I have no idea how people use things, but listen, I'm dumb, I'm a beginner, it's fine. You don't need to tell me this. I know I'm dumb, I know I'm a beginner, chill. But anyways, back to the topic. So she didn't like follow every little line. She would actually make it more flowy. She would use the 3D model as a sketch, she wouldn't use it as a base. It was like a sketchy line thing, and she would add things and take away things. Sometimes she wouldn't even modify the body, but like with the settings of the 3D model, she would modify the drawing or the line art. And sometimes she would resketch some certain like areas and stuff at the body and at the 3D model, and she would sketch it on top of it and then follow this with line art that was even more flowy than her sketch. And this is why it wasn't stiff, and this is like, I was so surprised, and I said I'm gonna give it another go. Just like with digital art, at the beginning it was really tough because I wasn't using the proper tools, or maybe I didn't have enough patience because I was drawing with my finger, and I was tracing like IRL, like drawn images on paper, and I didn't even have a scanner. I would take a shitty picture of it because I had a shitty phone, and I would like trace it and stuff. And this is where I would realize my perspective is off, my proportions are off, my anatomy is really shitty. So yeah, it was useful to an extent, but I didn't have the patience. And when I had the bravery to get a tablet and actually spend money on this, I spend a little bit more time on it, and I actually learned something. Interesting, right? You can never know. So yeah, give it another go. If you're an artist, it's really helpful, but I don't recommend you begin your first chapters with it. I highly recommend you start your first chapters with sketching them. Okay, if it's a difficult pose, I think you can use a 3D model or a picture, which is even better, and like kind of copy it, but I don't recommend you like go on it like it's a stencil, because tracing these at the beginnings, especially if you're just getting to learn this, is gonna be like me being a caveman and having everything looking stiff. And it didn't even look human-like. The proportions were so off. Although I traced it, it's because I didn't really edit it and add my own spin on it. So a child didn't look like a child, and a grown-up didn't look like a grown-up, and sometimes he would have abs and sometimes he didn't. You would notice in the first chapters, it was really crappy. Like, aside from the text that are being way too big, I didn't know about sizing at the time. Like, I didn't know it was gonna look different from the computer to the phone screen, but the art itself differentiated so much from chapter to chapter. And I don't mean like it being drawn digitally compared to traditionally, because the first chapter was traditional and the second was digital. But I mean, even from digital to digital, I would go around like styles and brushes and stuff, because it's an experimental project that I took seriously later on. But in the beginning, it was just like, oh, I'm gonna have fun and learn with this. But it actually got some following. It actually got people's attention, and people liked the story, surprisingly. Which, okay, now that I fixed some stuff and plot holes, it makes sense that they like the story. But at the beginning, with this kind of art and this kind of text, I was surprised anybody would even watch this. I was posting it just for shits and giggles, honestly, because my friends would want to see what kind of progress I made, and I would just post it because I didn't want to send it to each and every one, and also to document my growth, because I would take like long-ass breaks between one chapter and another. And although I did plan it, I would come back, scrap everything, and start all over again. Even if I did have sketches, I would repurpose them or change them completely. I wouldn't follow the same planning that I did before or sketching that I did before, because although I wasn't drawing much to improve, I was watching a lot, and I was seeing processes and analyzing pictures and stuff. So yeah, that explains the gap, the art and filters gap between two chapters that came like right next to each other. Is because initially I had like a long break, but when I posted them, I had other chapters ready, so I had buffer chapters. So I did post these and I had the other ones. That's why they look not very similar, but then as you go on, you find them looking a little bit more consistent. And even the art in this page is in chapter 12 or 13, I don't remember, but it's one of those. I didn't post it yet, like I'm only on chapter 6 or something in the manga, and the art looks so different to an artist's eye. Like maybe a viewer wouldn't be able to differentiate or even wouldn't care, but for me, analyzing the difference, it's surprising that I can see a difference between like the 6th chapter and the 12th chapter, although they're not made very far apart, just because I used different techniques. Like I didn't change the way that I draw, I mostly changed the way that I panel things or size things. So I would use the same brush, I would use the same backgrounds in line width, but I would change like how the effect is put or the lighting, maybe the shading. So yeah, that really changes everything completely, surprisingly. I keep on saying surprisingly is because I'm not an expert at this. Like I don't read a lot of manga. Yeah, you can imagine this. It's kind of ironic, me making manga without reading manga. But yeah, I actually don't read a lot of manga. In fact, I read a lot of, I don't know what it's called, but it's like a light novel. Like you have a lot of text, it's a novel basically, but every few pages you have an illustration, right? And I used to read a lot of them in Arabic, like old stories and stuff like that. And it was fantasy, etc., etc. So it really inspired me. I used to make them when I was younger, like much younger. But sometimes I wouldn't like them, and then I would throw them in the bin or like repurpose the paper or tear them apart because they're ugly and I don't want anybody to see them. But then I decided that I'm gonna make a whole manga because some of the poses and most of the poses that I have, I couldn't describe properly. Although I've been writing for a very, very long time, I wasn't professional at it, and sometimes I was doing it just for funsies. So you know how artists use, I don't remember what it's called, DeviantArt, I guess. Yeah, DeviantArt. So you see a lot of beginner work, but at the same time you see a lot of great work, and you're like, what is this platform for? Which of the sides is the dominant? And there's no dominant side. Both exist, and people in the middle too. We had, for writers, we had something, and readers for something, we had something called Wattpad. So I would write a lot of things on it, and I had a big ass following. I don't know why I wasn't professional, but I became like aware of the plot holes, and I actually started planning things ahead instead of typing every chapter on the spot, which is what a lot of people did at the time. It was not smart, it was not a good move, but it did the job and it did get me people. So when I improved, they were actually aware that I improved. And I thought they're not gonna notice because I thought like they read anything just to support others. But no, actually they did have a taste. They did understand some stuff, some concepts, and they sent me like ideas and stuff for like other chapters, and some of them still, like I'm still on contact with them on Instagram. They give me a lot of good ideas, and they're like, do what you wish with them. I would just want to read them in comic form or manga form. I don't own these ideas to myself. I give you the freedom to use them. Sometimes I do use them, sometimes I add my own spin on it, but mostly they like give me proper criticism that I actually need. I'm not a fan of just randomly going around and giving people criticism on their work, but for me, I actually ask them to give me their criticization because they have been following me for a long time and they know my weak spots, so they can tell really easily if I've improved or not, much better than myself. Although I'm one of my own biggest critics, I still am not as good as them. Yeah, I think it's a cool feature, it's a cool idea. And the reason why I made a whole chapter out of it is because I liked it so much and I wanted to experiment with myself, so I chose this chapter to do it on. Because I have a lot of already written chapters, but I had to fix some stuff because this page was not like planned for previously. I added a lot of details so I can fill some of the gaps that I left at the beginning, that I noticed when I reread the story from the beginning. I noticed some stuff that are not explained, and I wanted to explain them further, and maybe they're not explained well or not explained at all, so I added these little like tricks and stuff in the middle so people could actually understand where this came from, because it was planned ahead, but at the same time I didn't know how to implement it in the story, like as a show and not tell kind of situation. Like I didn't want to write the explanation, but at the same time I was too lazy to draw it, so I made a combination of both in this chapter, so you're gonna understand a lot in the 12th and the 13th chapter of Girly. So I recommend you like follow along and actually like read it, because it's becoming interesting. It's no longer an experimental project, it's a project of its own. I'm sorry for the first few chapters that you're gonna read. Like the first 3 chapters, or not 3 chapters, the first 2.5 chapters are kind of hard to read. The text is too big, it's kind of cringy, it's kind of meh, but it's initial. It was where I started, so although I'm embarrassed, that's the truth, I'm not gonna hide it. So yeah, enjoy the cringe, but I promise you it's gonna get so much better. So yeah, enjoy. And that's it, I guess. Love yourselves because I love you, and don't don't listen to these people who tell you that's not real art. It's not important. Just tell them to not follow if they don't like it, and that's it. Don't even have a conversation with these people, because honestly, I've had way too many conversations. They don't even use their brains. They're completely biased, and there's no use of talking to them. Trust me on this one. Anyways, bye.